pulpit. I've known Steve Ridgell since probably April or May of 1976. There are several people in the audience tonight that grew up in Steve's youth group when he was youth minister at the Duncanville congregation back in the year none of your business, that long ago. And Steve and Marcia have been in our home in Oklahoma City for some youth activities, and we've had a great friendship. And the nice thing about the brotherhood is you just pick up where you left off, and it's a wonderful thing tonight. Steve is going to talk to us about the subject of do-it-yourself Christianity, practical tips for everyday Christian living. And Steve makes his living at the proper time, working for the Herald of Truth ministry out of Abilene. He and Marcia have been there many, many years in Abilene. So, Steve, we want to give you all the time you need tonight, but everybody's leaving about 8. So, okay.
The big goal, I'm going to try to be through before you are. That's kind of the goal. So, ooh, man, I'm way up high. For a short guy, this is power. I'm a little overwhelmed right now. So it won't bother you if I eventually wander down and stay closer, will it? Good, because I feel like I'm a long way away. So I love this church. Now you're going to say, okay, why do you love this church? Because the people here, these are our people. We walked in the door, and Marcia and I have found person after person after person that we know and love. It is fantastic. Some of your elders, I know their relatives, and they speak of them, well of them, and they like them, and that's great. Steve's right, some of my old youth group from a couple of years ago, and y'all haven't changed a bit. Wherever Terry went, I didn't recognize him. He's really gotten old and retired, so it's hard to keep up. And the Jones are here. Some of our Abilene people. Levi, thank you for bringing your parents over here. I know they're getting old, but I really appreciate you doing that. So. And so many of us have connections that go back to ACU days and places I've done ministry and places I've preached. So thank you so much for inviting me. And it just makes it, that's what I love about church, our community of faith. Because we have family all over the world. And I walk into a place where I'm not sure I'm really going to know anybody. And I know everybody. And it's great. And we're here with Steve and Keitha. And we do go way back. Now, preachers have a lot of stories, and Steve just panicked about what I'm going to tell. Don't worry. I'm not going to tell about the stuff. I'm not. But this is a true story, not even a preacher story. I do these all over in the summer on Wednesday nights, and so last week we're in Fredericksburg, Texas, and the two guys on the staff and their wives have taken us out to eat. So we're eating in this restaurant, and this couple comes in, and they come running over and greet one of the staff members, and you can tell they know each other, and they're talking, and they're hugging, and the guy comes over to meet me and says, so who are you? And I said, my name is Steve Ridgell, and he said, so you do this all summer? And I said, yes, I'm here at Fredericksburg. Next week, I will be at Brown Street in Waxahachie. And he goes, Keitha Bailey! And I said, yes, yes. And her husband, and he went, no, he didn't. He said, Steve. And I said, yes. And he said, they are fantastic. And I said, yes, they are. And how do you know them? And why are you standing here in your shorts? They said, it was your old children's minister at Mesquite. And they were so excited. Now, he said, later he came up to me. They actually came to the church Wednesday night and heard me speak. It was interesting. They were the people in the vacation outfit. Really kind of interesting on Wednesday night there, but they were there in this Fredericksburg, so they got away with it. He came up after and he said, you came to Mesquite one time and preached. And I said, I did, you remember? And he said, well, I didn't really recognize you because I thought that guy was a lot younger. Probably was. And he said, even when I heard your name, that didn't mean anything to me because apparently you're not very famous. No, apparently not. And then he said, but when you started preaching, I immediately recognized your voice. And then my wife said, probably the lesson, which I thought was a little hurtful, dear. But yeah, I do the same lesson over and over, so what can you say? So I'm glad to hang out with you guys, and y'all, and you, and just all my people. So I will have about 5 minutes after church to visit with everybody who wants to talk to me. And then the elders have asked if I'll come in and talk about visit with them and Steve about stuff. So I won't be here long, but I will. I'll try to hug as many necks as we can. And if I don't know you, 5 years from now, I'll go somewhere to speak. You'll wander in and you'll say, I heard you. And I'll go, my people. And off we'll go. So there you go. You know, I really do spend my life going around mostly the United States, but sometimes all over the world. And I help people learn how to talk to their friends and neighbors and family about Jesus. Because one of the great things in your life is you're going to get to go to heaven and live forever. And the people around you are going to be in heaven with you. But you've got neighbors you love and family members you love and people that you work with and people you go to school with and people you play ball with, and you love them and you want them to be in heaven. And sometimes it's like, I wish I could help them get there, but I don't know what should, how do. And that's what I get to go in and equip people to do, is help people learn how to talk about Jesus. So actually what you're going to get tonight, I do a couple of seminars for churches about how to reach people for Jesus. One is called Followers Making Followers, and that's what most of this material is from. And then one called Can I Tell You a Story, that equips people to use stories. 21st Century Christian Publishing heard these seminars and asked if I would put them in book form. And so we did, and I've got a handful of them behind the sound. Where's the sound booth? Wherever, yeah, back there. I was going to, somewhere there is a sound booth. Yeah, I see you. Behind there, I've got some of those books. I tell you what, the Followers book is either $13 or $14 or $15. Everybody else hear that? Okay, good. I just want to be sure the Lord's not taking me home. If he is, honey, I love you. I'll see you when you get there, and it'll be okay. Just always want to be sure. So I tell you what we're going to do, because I can't remember how much it is. The Followers book is $13. The story book, let's make it $14, because I can't remember how much it is. You want to buy them both? $13 and $14 is $25. I'll give them to you for $25. So we'll do that. And here's the deal. For an extra $10, I'll autograph it. For an extra $100, I'll carry it to your car. For an extra $1,000, I'll come home and read them to you. We're not proud. No, I'm kidding. I'd be happy to sign them, or if you want them, that'd be great. If I get to the elders meeting, I trust this church. Throw your money in, take the book out, and I'd give it to Keith or Marsha or somebody, and they'll get it to me. So I love, and maybe someday I'll come back and we'll do the expanded version of those seminars. So you're going to bring in your missionary, and you're going to send somebody off to the mission field. And here's how we define the mission field. Somewhere over there, somewhere away, somewhere we take somebody and send them. So if we're sitting here in Waxahachie, the mission field is Cuba or Africa or the Northeast United States. Now, if you're sitting in Cuba, where's the mission field that you think about? Well, the United States or Africa or Northeast. If you're in the Northeast United States, you know where the mission field is? Now, if you're in the Northeast, here's the mission field. Waxa, whatever that place is, because they can't pronounce it. It's like the guy from the north. He drove into Waxahachie, and he saw the sign on the city limits, and he wanted to know how to pronounce it because he couldn't figure out how to say it. So he pulled in to get a drink at a place, and he walked in, and he said, "Ma'am, could you help me while you're here? How do you pronounce the name of this place?" And she said, "Dairy Queen." I know it's a bad preacher joke. You know, we think about mission work as over there because when Jesus did the Great Commission in Matthew 28, 19 and 20, he said, go into all the world. And so we think, so when the missionary comes in, what's our go-to passage? The Great Commission. If we want to talk about, you need to go over and talk the Great Commission because that's about somebody sending somebody over there. But here's the thing, when you read that, I'm not sure Jesus had in mind at all sending people away. I'm not sure that what Jesus really said was, you, as my disciples, go into your world and make other disciples. You teach them, you baptize them, and you know what? I'm going to be with you, even to the end of the age. What if the Great Commission is not to a missionary to go there? What if it's to believers here to walk outside of these doors and go into our neighborhood and into our school and into the place we work and into our family reunions? What if the Great Commission is about you going into your world and making disciples for the one who died for you? What if that's the Great Commission? And so if it is, then 2 or 3 questions would seem to me to be worth answering. One is, well, okay, if I go into my world, how do I go? I mean, if my neighbor, my coworker, my friend needs Jesus, how do I go into their world? And then secondly, when I go into that world, where? I mean, I'm going to walk up these doors, where? And if I figure out how and I figure out where, then what do I do when I get there? So I want us to think a little bit. When Jesus said go, he told you to go into your world and make disciples. So how do I go? It's a great story. In the original manuscripts, the first part of John 8 is probably not there, which tells you it may not be original in Scripture, but at some point, some scribe evidently wrote this story down. And then the next guy just left it and copied it, and the next guy, and the next guy, and the next guy. And you know why I think they did that? It may not have been originally in Scripture, but it might have been an authentic story from the life of Jesus. Well, no, because all the stories about Jesus are in the Bible, aren't they? Well, no, John said if you wrote down everything Jesus could do, the whole world could not contain the books if you wrote down everything Jesus had done. So, I think Jesus did a lot of things that didn't get in Scripture, but apparently this is a real story because people put it in and it stayed for generations. And here's the story. She was caught in the act. She was caught in the act of adultery. Not, I think there's evidence, we suspicion, it looks like the car stayed there all night. She was caught in the act of adultery. And they brought her before Jesus, who was teaching the people in the courtyard. Now, that would be the equivalent of somebody catching you doing something that everyone knows is not right, and they catch you right in the middle of it, and all of a sudden these back doors burst open, and a bunch of elders drag you right down here and stop right here in front of everyone and say this: "We just caught her in the act of adultery." Now, don't anybody shout out the answer, please. But think for a moment about your worst sin. Now, if you're like me, it takes a long time to play that out. I'm not even sure what the worst one is, but hadn't you ever done things in your life you hope nobody ever knows? Or not done something that you should have done? A time when you are supposed to do the do's and don't the don'ts, and you don't do the do's and did the don'ts. I say that real fast 10 times. But you've got those things. What if we started scrolling through the PowerPoint and had your name up there and just listed 3 or 4 of your highlight sins? How long do you think for everybody started turning around going, "Really? Keith, I never would have dreamed. Really? Man, Levi, you're so young. How could you have done that?" And on and on and on that goes. Because here's what they really wanted to happen. They said, "Jesus, this woman's caught in the act of adultery. The law says stone her." So here's the deal, Jesus. We caught this woman in sin. The Bible says you're supposed to stone her. What do you say? Now, clearly, they're after Jesus, not the woman. And there's a couple of ways you know this. One, they thought they had Jesus trapped. Okay, Jesus, the law says stone her. And if he says, "No, show mercy," you don't believe in the Bible. I knew it. You are a liberal. Wow. Or this way. Okay, you're right. Stone her. You conservative, legalistic hypocrite. You're supposed to love people, and now you want to kill this poor woman. I thought they had him. The other reason I know it really wasn't about the woman. It was about Jesus, because they brought the woman caught in adultery. Now, I'm not real good at math, but I think something's missing there. Who's missing? The guy. Now, I don't know if they burst in and said, "We've got you." "Oh, Bill, sorry, didn't know it was you. We'll just take her. Sorry, Bill." I don't know. I don't know why they had the affair or the adultery. I don't know if she's a prostitute. I don't know if they thought they were in love. I don't know if they were in lust. I don't know if they met at the Camel Bar down the street. I don't know how they got there. But here's what I do think. Imagine how that woman must have felt. The guilt and the shame and the humiliation that she must have been carrying. The whole world knows her sin. Because that's what the world does. You know how many of your friends and neighbors, family members, are living with horrible guilt and shame in their life? The things they do, they wish they wouldn't do. The things they've done, they wish they hadn't done. The opportunities they miss for things, and they don't know what to do about that, and they know there's got to be a better life, and they don't have a clue. And, of course, you remember what Jesus did. He started writing in the dirt. I've often wondered, when I get to heaven, I'm going to say, Jesus, I got to know, what did you write? I mean, I've thought about it a lot. I don't know if he wrote down and said, do not get mad at them. You came for people like these guys and her and all these people listening. Or maybe he wrote down the guys that drug her in and started writing their name and listing their sins out. Because he said, okay, you guys want to stone her? Let the one without sin cast the first stone. Now, real quick, tell me, who could have thrown the first stone? Jesus. Yeah. I mean, there is a guy there with no sin. He sure could have, but they couldn't. And I'm going to tell you, we get really hard on those guys, but I'm going to tell you why I love those guys and why I love the oldest guy there. He's the one that got it first. Because they thought about him a minute and said, man, he's right. We're being judgmental and harsh, and the oldest guy leaves first, and then right down the line they went. And Jesus says, so, is there no one left to condemn you? No, sir, no one. Then neither do I. Now, I want you to understand real clearly the difference between our world and your Jesus. In the world, you get guilt and shame and condemnation, and Satan works to make you feel terrible. You have no self-esteem, no good feelings about yourself, and Jesus comes and says, I am here to offer love and forgiveness and peace and joy and hope. Man, that is a great story. Okay, so what's the point of all that? Remember when Jesus said, go into your world and make disciples? You know what he tells her? Go. Huh, hey, that's two goes. Go into your world and make disciples. Go into your world and what? Stop sinning. You know, the world says a lot of hard things about us, and I want to be real clear. None of us are perfect. We're not. I mean, I told you how many people I know here. I love them all. I know stuff about a lot of people in here, and guess what? You're not perfect. We don't always live up to the standards we want to. We don't always reflect Jesus in everything we do. But let me tell you real clearly a couple of things about the difference between us and people in the world. When we do something we shouldn't do or don't do something we should do, we are sorry for it. We ask forgiveness for it. We work hard to do better the next time. And you know what? We get better over time. If you think some of us are hypocrites now, you ought to see us without Jesus. I don't know about you, but you know where I'd be without Jesus? Dead. I would. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Jesus Christ. He's made all the difference to us. So it's really important for us if we're going to go out in the world and tell people Jesus changed his lives, you know the first thing they're going to do? Look at us. Somebody said, well, I don't know if I'm really as good a Yeah, you are. Yeah, you don't have to be perfect. You do have to learn to live forgiven. You do. Which means sometimes your most powerful witness is going back to the guys at work and say, you know, yesterday I laughed at that joke, and I want to tell you guys, that's not who I want to be, and really that's not funny, and I'm sorry. What are you, some kind of holy roller? Well, yeah, I am. I'm trying to be more holy because I'm committed to Jesus, and I don't think that was funny. That's why sometimes we go back and say, I'm sorry. That's why sometimes when somebody comes up and says, boy, I heard you caught your husband. He is dead meat. When's the divorce? Well, we're going to try to work it out. Are you an idiot? Well, no, I'm a Jesus follower, and he's sorry, and we're going to try to make this work. Why would you do that? Well, because Jesus forgives, and there's some powerful witness in how we live and how we forgive and how we conduct ourselves. And when we go out in this world and people look at us, we want them to say, wow, the Jesus life works. Look at them. They're not perfect, but they love and they care. So I'm going to tell you, the first thing when I tell you to go in your world and make disciples, here's how I want you to go. Go live forgiven. Be the safe house of the neighborhood. Be the people at work that are nice to people and that do good stuff. Be the people of Jesus. You don't have to be perfect. You do have to learn to live forgiven. See yourself the way Jesus sees you. So I'm going to tell you, go in your world and make disciples. And the way you go is to go and live forgiven. So where in my world do I go? Well, in Luke 10, Jesus talks about the two greatest commandments. Now, I hear people sometimes say, all commandments are equal. No, they're not. Jesus didn't say that. Jesus said the greatest commandment is to what? Love the Lord, basically with all you got. What's the second one? Love as yourself. And there's one in every crowd. There's always somebody who wants to show how good he is. Well, let me ask you something, Jesus. Who is my neighbor? I mean, is my neighbor the guy that lives on either side of me? Now, the house on the left is vacant, so does it have to be the next guy? Or, is my neighbor the guy in every house I can see? What about the guy 2 doors down? I really don't see him. Is my neighbor, I don't even know their names, so are they my neighbor? And Jesus told the story of the Good Samaritan. You know who your neighbor is? You remember that story. Guy finds a guy beat up, and he goes over to help him, and I don't know why. I don't know whose fault it was he got beat up. I don't know if he's an idiot and everybody else knew not to travel alone, and he did. I don't know what happened. And I love this story for all the people who have ever been hurt by religion, hurt by Christians, because sometimes we've hurt people. Because if there's anybody that doesn't do, Jesus is pretty good about not dumping on people. But if there's anybody that doesn't come off good in this story, it's the deacon and the elder. I used to say the preacher, but since I are one, I don't say that. It was clearly a deacon and an elder, I'm pretty sure. But they go and they walk, they sing, but they go around on the other side. And he talks about the man who came and with some courage and some effort and some expenditure of resources, time and energy and money. He helps that man. And so when he gets through, he says, so who do you think was the neighbor? Well, I guess the guy that helped him. Remember what Jesus said? Go. Go into your world, make disciples. Go and live forgiven. Go and do the same. So where do I go in my world? I go everywhere there's a need in my world. Now, needs may be physical. It may be going to the hospital and sitting with a neighbor. It may be somebody at work that says, man, my world is falling apart and I don't know what to do. And you say, what can I do to help? I mean, there's no way to help. I've got bills. And so you bring them a sack of groceries. Maybe you help that way. Maybe it's a lonely person. And you realize that Thanksgiving, nobody's ever at their house. And so you go over and say, hey, my people are here today, but why don't you come over and eat with us? We'd love to have you. Her name's Kathy. She's a single mom. She moved in next door to us. Now, I'm not a great yard guy by any means. I mean, I grow crabgrass really well, but the rest of it's kind of a battle. But I'm going to tell you, Kathy's yard, after she'd been there a month, it made my yard look immaculate. I mean, I wanted to put out Yard of the Month on my front lawn, and I would tell Marcia, man, Kathy doesn't ever mow her yard. She doesn't ever take care of it. That is embarrassing. I'm going to buy a goat and stick in that yard pretty soon, because one day Marcia and I are out mowing the yard. She's mowing, I'm weed eating. And I look up, and she goes right across our driveway into Kathy's yard with our lawnmower. And I think, oh my, Marcia's had a stroke. She's fixing to fall out. I want to see if I can save her. So I go run, and she starts mowing the yard. And you know how wives and husbands communicate with a look? She glances over and very lovingly with her eyes says, start weed eating her yard. So I take off. About that time, Kathy pulls in, gets out of her car and does this. Please tell me that moved. If not, I've just had a stroke and I'm dying, but that's okay, yeah. She says, what are y'all doing? We shut everything off. Says, what are you doing? Mowing your yard. Why? Because your yard needs it. Jesus has been really good to us, and we're Jesus people, and we figured you could use a hand. And she says, how about the back? Okay. Marcia goes and looks first. She comes out and she says this, and this one I knew was not going to be good. She says, Steve will be glad to do the back. I didn't have our shredder, but I really needed it. Come to find out later, Kathy was a single mom because her husband had left her, and he had always done the yard. She did not own a lawnmower. She didn't even know how to mow. When Marcia found out, she said, Kathy said, I can get a lawnmower, but I don't know how to use it. Marcia said, Steve will teach you. Now, you're going, okay, so when did you convert Kathy? We hadn't yet, but you know what she has learned? Here's what she's learned, that Jesus changes how you view people, and that Jesus people help people. So where you go in your world is where people have needs, because if we're going to reach our people for Jesus, one, we're going to live different lives, and they're going to look at us and say the Jesus way works. And we serve people first because Jesus said to, secondly because Jesus did, and we would be like him. But thirdly, we serve people because that opens doors. People are going to listen a lot more. You've heard the old story, and it's a sad, sad preacher story that I pray is not true. But these two ladies decided they needed to go convert the young mother down the road. So they walked in, and they knocked on the door, and nobody answered, but they could hear the kids crying. They opened the door, and there were a couple of kids in the floor, and the house was a mess, and the kids had dirty diapers, and there were dishes in the sink, and they made their way to the back. Lady was laying in bed, and they said, are you okay? And she said, I've got the flu. I feel terrible. I can't get out and get my medicine. The kids are everywhere. And they said, well, I'm so, so sorry. We'd like to pray for you, and we really wanted to talk to you about Jesus. We'll come back in a couple of weeks if you feel better. I pray that kind of thing never happened. I would hope that we would go in and change the kids' diapers and clean the room and go get her medicine and fix her a meal. And then when we came back sometime later and said, you know, we'd like to share something with you, she's going to be a whole lot more interested in hearing because she knows we care. Now, I don't think any of us are Jesus, but I do believe this. We are the body of Christ. We are. And we are his hands and his feet, and we want to see with his eyes. And so I'm going to tell you, you go into your world, and you go and you live forgiven, and you go and you serve other people. But the other thing you've got to do is another great story in Scripture. The guy was a mess. His nickname was Legion because he had so many demons he had to battle in his life. You ever known anybody consumed by the demons in their life? The demon of alcohol, demon of drugs, greed. People that life has been so hard to, they're just mean people. You ever known those people? Some of you have fought your demons over the years. And I love you for being a faith fighter. And I love you for being here. Man, Legion had a lot of demons to fight. And one day, Jesus and the apostles land their boat at the cemetery where Legion lives. Now, if you want to read the story, go read Mark 5. It is a great story. But basically, Legion has no friends, has no social life. He is so miserable that he cuts himself with stones. If any of you are in public education at all, you know one of the phenomenon, especially among preteen girls, which Legion was not, but he shares the phenomenon, is cutting. They're cutters. Her name was Brittany. Her mom taught with Marcia, and she called Marcia one day and she said, I need you to help my son Matthew and his girlfriend Brittany. Now, Matthew had cystic fibrosis, and he died maybe 5 or 6 years ago at the age of 36. Lived much longer than they thought he would. But because of cystic fibrosis, Matt was a little socially behind. At the time this happened, he was about 30. He had met Brittany, who was 18, and they had fallen in love. Brittany had been sexually abused as a child, had tried to commit suicide. Here's what Matt's mom wanted Marcia and I to do. She wanted us to meet with Matt and Brittany. She said, here's what I need you to do. Break them up. So we get a hold of them. They come over, and you can tell they don't want to be there, and we're not sure what to do. And so we're sitting there, and they're talking a little bit. We said, so what do y'all want to do? And they said, well, his mom wants us to break up, and y'all are supposed to not marry us and break us up. I said, okay. We talked a little bit more, and I finally said, let me ask you something. Why would you want to get married? Well, we ought to get married. And I said, well, you're clearly living together, and you're doing the stuff married people will do. And at that point, Brittany turns around to Matt and goes, I thought you said he was a preacher. And Matt said, yeah, but I think my mom said he's kind of a weird preacher. So Okay. So we talk a little bit more, and all of a sudden Matt says, okay, I know what you really want to tell us. You want to tell us to come to church. And I know we ought to, and so we'll start coming to church. And I said, you know, Marcia's mom says a great thing. Sitting in the hen house don't make you a chicken, and sitting in the church house doesn't make you a Christian. Brittany says, you sure he's a preacher? Marcia then says, you know, he is, but, you know, we've tried. It's the best we can do. So I said, you know, we really ought to, and about that time, Brittany explodes. And she says, I don't even know why we're having this conversation. He's right. He said, you're supposed to be a Christian, and you don't live it, and I don't know anything about Jesus. I don't know nothing, and he's right. We're living together, and we're... And it gets real quiet. I look at Marcia, and she looks at me, and because I am clearly the spiritual giant and leader in our family, I said, honey, would you like to say anything? She did, but it was after they were gone in privacy, and she did have some things to say. So I said, let me tell you what, why don't we not worry about your relationship? How would you like to do this? Why don't you just come over every week? We'll sit around, we'll just tell Jesus stories. Okay, we'd like to do that. So they start coming over, and one night I'm telling the story of Legion. And I said, you know, he had a lot of demons, and he was battling all these things, and he would cut himself. And all of a sudden, tears start running down Brittany's face. I said, Brittany, you okay? She didn't say a word. She just unbuttoned her sleeve, rolled it up, and showed me the little scars. She was a cutter, and here's what she said. I had no idea there was anyone like me in the Bible. And I said, oh, Brittany, we're all there, all of us. Now, you know how that story goes. Jesus gets out and goes toward Legion, who comes running down saying, don't torture me. I've always been a little puzzled by that. Did you think Jesus was going to waterboard him or something? You know what I think he was saying? Listen, everybody's always said they can fix my life. Everybody's always going to help me. Nobody stays, nobody sticks, nothing works. So don't give me false hope. If you're going to tell me you can help me, then do, but don't lie to me. If we're going to go out there and tell people Jesus changes lives and we want you to be in community, and we're going to love each other and live faithful to Jesus, we better put up or shut up. We had. And Jesus says, tell me something. What's your name? I love that. See, it's hard to convert your neighbor because Scott and Shelley moved in catty-corner from us. And I go into Marshall one day and I said, you know what? I don't think Scott and Shelley go to church. Well, what I said was, our new neighbors, catty-corner, I don't think they go to church. We need to convert them. And because she can cut to the chase, she said, do you know their name? And I said, because I am a spiritual giant. Do you? Again, not the wisest thing I've ever said in our conversations, and she said, don't you think we ought to get to know them before we run over and try to Jesus them? Okay, let me know when you find out. So I said, you're right. We ought to. Over the years, we did different things with them, prayed with them, made meals when people died, did a lot of things for them. Never did make a lot of progress, but I think we made some progress because one day Scott saw me at a bank. He came around and said, Steve, I know you really want us to move along with this Jesus thing, and I think we're making progress because the other day I attended my niece's baptismal. I said, her baptismal? He said, yeah, you know her baptismal. I never did understand what a baptismal is, but he went. They have since moved off, and I don't know what happened, but some Jesus seeds were planted because you get to know people, you live different, you serve different, but at some point, you got to say something because Jesus said to Legion, I'm going to fix you. I'm going to cast your demons out. And he did. Great story, by the way. If everyone knows if you can tell it, Jesus, if you can't talk about 2,000 pigs getting entered into by demons, run down the hill and drowning, wouldn't you love to know more about the conversation between the two guys watching the pigs? Hey, there's Legion coming down the hill. Who's that he's talking to? I think it's that Jesus guy. Oh, this is going to be great. Jesus and Legion. Hey, they're having a conversation. Pigs are a little restless. The pigs! Maybe we ought to go tell somebody, you think. And when the townspeople hear about it and go running out, you remember what they see? Legion, dressed in his right mind, talking to Jesus. And it scares them. So I want to be real clear here. I want all of you to be passionate about reaching people for Jesus. But let me tell you, it's a scary deal. It is. I don't make light of how hard it is to mow the yard, talk to people, share a story with people, invite people to something. I know that's tough. But man, their soul depends on people like you and me saying something to them. The townspeople are so scared of the power of Jesus. And I'm going to tell you, if you really get serious about reaching over your fence to your neighbor, it will change this church. And I think you're a good church, and I think you want to do this. But I'm going to tell you, you start reaching people for Jesus, it changes everything. So if you really want to do something pretty cool, you spend the next 30 days praying for Jesus to put somebody in your life who needs to know his son, for God to put somebody in your life who needs to know his son, Jesus. You pray that for 30 days, you know what's going to happen? God's going to put somebody in your life who needs to know Jesus. And that's a scary thing. In fact, you remember what the townspeople asked Jesus to do? Leave. They asked him to leave. And you know what Jesus did? Got in the boat. Now, I want to be real clear here. Your job is not to convert your neighbor. Your job is to share your faith with your neighbor. Your neighbor needs to know Jesus. What they do about Jesus is between them and Jesus, not them and you. My job is to plant seed. My job is to water. You know whose job it is to give the increase? God's job to give the increase. So Legion jumps in the boat with Jesus, and Jesus says, no. No? No, you know what he tells him? Go. Wow, we're running into that a lot. Go and tell your family what the Lord has done for you. Go into your world and make more believers. So how do I go? You go living forgiven. And where do I go? Wherever you find a need. And what do I do when I get there? You speak a word for Jesus. We've got to learn to start saying, boy, God did this. Somebody says, hey, I hear you had a good week at work. Yeah, it was God. What do you mean it was God? He did the work for you? Well, I'm a believer, and so I think God did. Man, hey, I heard you were really sick. What happened? I think God healed me. Yeah. What did he do? Come down and appear? And, I don't know. I prayed. I'm better. We got to learn to give God credit. Man, shame on us for saying, boy, I was lucky. Well, I really worked hard. Man, we got to be. So what do you want, Steve? You want me to go around being some kind of hands in the air, singing about Jesus all the time? Yeah, sort of. I do. I want your neighborhood. I want your family. I want your friends. I want your classmates to know you are the one that talks about Jesus. You give credit to Jesus. You hold Jesus up. You acknowledge God. You live different. And you don't say, I'm just a good guy. You say, because Jesus is good. It is never because we're good. It is because he is good. And we want to be more like him. So here's the challenge for all of us. I think there are people in Waxahachie and the area around here who need Jesus. I think you know some of them. I think even tonight, as we have done this lesson, you have thought about people that you would like to tell about Jesus. And I love you for that. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to start praying for those people by name. I want you to share with each other the people you're praying for. I want you to ask God to put people in your life who need to know Jesus. And I believe God will honor that. And when he does, say, but what do I say? I mean, you're saying say a word for Jesus. What do I say? We'll start with telling them what the Lord has done for you. Yeah, I guess you know I get up every Sunday and go to church. Yeah, I knew you were one of those church guys. Can I buy you a cup of coffee and tell you why? Why don't you and the wife come over Tuesday night and we'll eat? I'd like to share the most important thing in the world to me. So what are you selling? No, not selling, giving. Giving. And then tell your story. Well, I don't know, what do you mean my story? Tell what the Lord has done for you. Well, I don't know that he's ever done anything for me. Okay, we need to have a different conversation. Because God has done amazing things for every one of us. And we've got to learn to share that with people. What if they think I'm an idiot? Okay. What if they think I'm some kind of holy roller? Okay. What if they don't listen? Okay. What if they do? What if they say, man, I wish I had that kind of faith? I can help you with that. One last hint I'll give you. If you ever say, come over Tuesday night and let's have a meal, the wife and I will eat. I'm not going to tell you why this is a big deal. You ought to tell your wife if you do that. That's all I'm going to say. But you really ought to tell your wife if you're going to do that. And not when the doorbell rings. You know what? I'll pray for you to share your faith. So I'm going to tell you, we're fixing to sing an invitation song, and here's what I want from you during the invitation. I want you to commit that you want to tell somebody about Jesus. And Steve will be down here if you want to come talk to Steve, but a couple of things. If you're here tonight and you've never committed your life to Jesus, I beg you not to leave tonight without committing to talk to someone about what it means to die and be buried and raised to a new life with Jesus. I'll connect you with somebody. When we're singing, I'll be walking up and down the aisle, and I'll connect you with somebody who'll talk to you about Jesus. Some of you are going, yeah, you know, that whole live different. I'm having a little trouble with that, Steve. I hadn't quite. You know why we're family? Because you don't have to do this alone. So you know what? Go to one of your elders' wives. Get Steve or Keith. Find me, find Marshall. We'll connect you with somebody here. And say, you know what, I'm struggling. You know what we'll do? We'll pray with you. We'll speak truth into your life. We'll walk along beside of you. We'll love you. We'll help you find forgiveness. We're not going to be in the business of condemning each other. The world does enough of that. We're going to love each other to be better people. And if tonight you thought of somebody you want to share Jesus with, when we're singing the song, I'm just going to walk up and down, flag me over, say, would you pray for Bill? And you know what? Right there, I will pray for you to have the courage and the opportunity to speak a word to Bill about Jesus. Because if it's not us, who is it going to be? Let's stand and sing together.